Hello students, in the last program you have read about indigenous graphic design practices. Today we are going to look into the development of script. Do you know what is graphic design? Graphic design is the use of communication to promote development and ideas through various techniques and medium. More specifically, it refers to the practice of systematically applying the processes and strategies and aesthetic principles of visual communication to bring about a positive social change. Students, the books you read, the magazines you read, and other forms of seeking information are very recent developments in the history of civilization. Prehistoric men, they lived without such visible means of communication for many centuries. Nevertheless, man's mind made them curious about the environment. This led them to invent ways to communicate with each other. Sign language, which developed because of this desire, was probably the first method of communication which early men had. Sign language, however, was not sufficient. Men sought some ways of recording and preserving their ideas. These initial efforts were crude and could not adequately express detailed information. Memory aids and picture writing were developed to enable men to give a more accurate version of their deeds and expressions than what was possible by means of signs. The experiences of early men and their historic and religious traditions were communicated orally from generation to generation by someone with good memory. But students, do you think it's a good idea to depend totally on memory? No, of course not. That is the reason why the societies were also not satisfied to depend entirely upon a man's memory. They soon learned that men forget and that the more a story is told, the more it varies from the original. The words of religious songs and stories of important events should not vary if they have to keep their values alive. For this reason, picture diagrams were used to help recall the ideas in correct order to make the meaning more certain. There has been ancient practice of reminding an important event or experience where cairns were used as memory aids. But what cairn is? It's a heap of stones which is piled together to form a conical shape. Memorial cairns time and again have been erected. Buddha Stupa and Taj Mahal also serve the purpose of reminders. Even in modern times, cairns are often erected as landmarks or as a reminder monument. As the tribe grew larger and larger, it became more numerous. The need for labeling one's personal property became very important. It was necessary to mark the graves of the dead so that they might be remembered for a longer period of time than what was possible by a mere memory aid. Personal property such as cattle also bore the marks of the owner. These marks were very crude but soon took the form of simple pictures which were known as ideograms. Modern brands and trademarks are an outgrowth of this early system. Stone and metal inscriptions were put on graves, land and posts. Maps of the tribal camps were drawn in pictorial style. As the most important characteristics of graphic art is considered to be the momentum of reproducing identical copies. It is done by means of mechanical process of taking impression and printing. This explanation may be extended to include all those pre-industrial impressions which are represented by the relief prints. These were printed from seals, coins and larger mold cast surfaces, specifically invented for this purpose. This mold cast were used in the earliest Indian civilization, especially in the Indus Valley at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Later, the alphabetical signs were segregated more and more from the pictures. Throughout the ages, the evolution of writing from the image of pictograms and then later on inscriptional images were inspired from calligraphic strokes. Do you know, students, that in India, the alphabet is called as Varnmala or a band of colors and may owe itself to the colored seal impressions used for instruction in ancient India. The ancient Indian grammarians had, by the 5th century BC, scientifically analyzed the phonetic system of the Sanskrit language. They also arranged the letters of the alphabet on a thoroughly rational system, that is, vowels before consonants. Well, in India, the earliest concept of the book was a collection of leaves or sheets of bark strung together between covers by a cord. Similarly, all the manuscripts from South India have their text written on leaves through incision with an iron stylus. After inscribing, the leaves were usually smeared with carbon-based ink and then cleaned with sand, leaving the ink in the incised letters, which otherwise would have been almost invisible. As it was difficult to write directly on the leaves of the palmyra, the method of inscribing became the only one used in southern India after its widespread adoption as the formal writing on palm leaf. Later, Indians turned naturally to stone and metal when they wanted to record a text for all times. The long-lasting stones were used widely for inscriptions from the 3rd century BC. This was occasionally used by a royal author to demonstrate his literary as well as martial talents. Buddhist texts were frequently inscribed on metal plates and strung between covers like palm leaf manuscripts. The copper plate charters were more in practice than the stone inscriptions, which recorded the granting of land to individuals from the king, represented by the chief minister or chief of staff. Some examples of these survive from the 4th century. These records were first copied on cloth, birch bark or palm leaf before being handed over to the coppersmith for engraving. The originals were apparently kept in the royal chancellery and the plates were given to the recipient. The smiths copied not only the letters but also the shapes of the original. The text was incised parallel to the long side. Usually, several sheets were required to complete the text, and these were in pothi, which is book format. They were then strung through a hole to which a royal bronze seal that was cast from a mold which could be affixed. They were especially important as the only permanent records of land holdings and were frequently altered by beating out the important details and recurving. China, Japan and Korea have employed the phonetic forms of writing for more than 2000 years now. Even today, their prints, made in many colors from the carved cherry wood blocks, are excellent examples. While the art of printing and paper making was quite advanced in China, the people of Middle East were inscribing their records on stone and clay with characters known as cuneiform writing. The splendid example of cuneiform writing on clay tablets and clay stamps were first found in Mesopotamia. Cuneiform writing was inscribed on clay tablets and cylinders and on the great monuments of Assyria and Babylon. Students, have you heard about the word hieroglyphics or picture writing? Well, it was another form of the early stages of writing. True hieroglyphics were used only for the purpose of decoration. The most picturesque forms were carved by the early Egyptians on tombs, pillars, buildings, temples, palaces, and wherever else the need for record and communication arose. Hieroglyphics were given their name by Greeks. Later, the art of writing was freed from any constraints of mechanical means or technological devices, and calligraphy developed. Students, you must have heard about the word calligraphy, but do you know what it means? The art of beautiful handwriting is known as calligraphy. Calligraphy reached its highest point of development in Chinese and Japanese art. Also, some remarkable achievements took place in Islamic art and certainly traditional Indian art. Handwriting was preceded by cutting of the characters in stone or metal using some sharp tool, and therefore development of calligraphy is influenced by this. Angular letter style is supposed to be inherited from epigraphy and then changed to rounded characters. In Europe, there was a marked difference between the hand-used literary works, which is known as uncial style, and the hand-used for documentation and letters, known as cursive style. Within each of these styles, many sub-styles emerged. The Latin calligraphy also developed from epigraphic style known as majuscule writing, which is known as capitals. During the Renaissance, artists and scribes adopted the geometrically formed letters of Roman inscriptions. They are the originators of the fine round letter forms, which are the foundations for present-day Roman type used in printing. Gradually, calligraphy paved the way for typography as printing took over handwriting. So students, this is all about the development of script. I hope all of you have understood about the different concepts of development of script, and you can easily answer any questions related to it. In the next program, you will be learning about the evolutions in reprography. Thank you.